Hey everyone, Dr. Huff here, and thank you so much for your patience as you've been waiting for this next module. In previous classes, when I've taught this face-to-face, I have separated out the cross-examination and the rebuttals and some of the final speeches, and I decided what would be best at this point is to put them all together so it's in one place for you to be able to not only easily find it, but to perhaps even understand it better in terms of how it all flows together. So I'm going to talk here about cross-examination and the rebuttal speeches, and these are the parts of the debate that we have not covered yet. You have already done the hardest work, which is the constructive speech for the affirmative and the constructive speech for the negative. And what you will see after you work your way completely through this module is how the entire debate works by putting in the cross-examination questions and the remaining speeches known as the rebuttals and the summaries. So let's go ahead and we will remind ourselves of the order of the debate. So as I said, you've already done the constructives. And what happens after the affirmative constructive, negative gets to cross-examine the affirmative for 1 minute. And then after the negative constructive, the affirmative gets to do the same. And we'll talk about cross-examination more in a minute. And then there are 3 speeches remaining in the entire round. The first is the affirmative rebuttal, where the affirmative gets to get up and not only rebut the points of the negative, but rebuild their own. Then the negative rebuttal summary, the negative gets to rebuild their contentions and then summarize the case with their audience. And then the affirmative has the last speech of the round, also with the opportunity to summarize their points. And you'll see how this looks more as we go along. So first of all, let's talk about cross-examination. So again, you're going to have 1 minute to cross-examine your opponent. You're going to need to have a minimum of 3 questions ready to go. And I say a minimum because you have a minute. You might be able to get those first 3 questions asked and still have a lot of time left. And the focus is to be able to maximize that minute. So although I asked for a minimum of 3 questions ready to go, I would go ahead and plan on having at least 5 questions. That way you can maximize your time. And the way this will work is that prior to your scheduled debate, you will be sent your opponent's constructive speech prior to the actual debate. And so what that means is that you will see their main argumentation, you'll see their initial research, and you're going to be able to draft and ask questions very specifically that target the different parts of your opponent's plan and case. So cross-examination questions should be deliberate, succinct, and they typically ask a yes-no question. You want to be careful of asking what are called open-ended questions, where your opponent can just ramble and waste your time. So for example, an open-ended question might be, what do you think is the best way to solve for police brutality? Well, at that point, your opponent could go on and answer everything versus, do you believe the best way to handle police brutality is cultural training? And that is a yes-no question where that way if they try to ramble or they try to steal your time, you can take them back and ask them to really answer that question yes or no. Cross-examination questions should poke holes in your opponent's case. And the whole point about cross-examination is that it is used to not only poke those holes in the case, but to ultimately create doubts in the audience's mind about your opponent. So after the negative constructive and the affirmative has their cross-examination time, we get to the first of the last 3 speeches of the debate, and the first of these is the affirmative rebuttal. Now in this speech, the affirmative must first address the negative's contentions or rebut the claims of the negative. So this is the first opportunity that the affirmative gets a chance to speak against the negative case, and so they're going to push back and give some counter arguments to what the negative presented in their constructive case. Anytime that you have one of these rebuttals, or one of these pushbacks, they should have a cited source, so those will be researched as well. And then the affirmative gets to rebuild his or her contentions, contention 1, contention 2, providing additional research and sources. And you will see this outlined in the full debate brief that's provided in the next section. The negative rebuttal, which is also called the negative rebuttal summary, happens after the affirmative rebuttal. And in this speech, the negative gets to rebuild his or her contentions, contention 1, contention 2, providing additional research and sources. But this is also the last speech of the negative, so she or he gets to provide 3 clear reasons why the audience should vote for their side before they end for the time. And these reasons are called voters. And the voters are simply that: why should you vote for my particular side? And then that speech will end with a simple thank you. And then the very last speech of the round, the affirmative summary. They also get to provide 3 clear reasons why the audience should vote for their side. Again, those are just the voters. And then the speech is going to end with a simple thank you. So if you're confused at this point, that's okay. In the next section, I provide an entire debate from start to finish in written form. So you will see exactly how the entire flow of the debate works from start to finish. And I have chosen a different resolution for this sample debate that you're going to be not only reading but watching, and it is resolved: violent juvenile criminals ought to be treated as adults in the criminal justice system. So violent juvenile criminals ought to be treated as adults in the criminal justice system. And then following the written sample, I have provided a sample video that shows you the entire round from start to finish. So I literally will be playing both sides of the debate with costume changes so you can see an entire debate round and understand what's going to ultimately be expected of you not too long in the near future. So I hope everyone is doing well. And of course, as we work our way through this, anytime that you have questions, you can always feel free to reach out to me via text or email, or if you want to meet with me virtually, we can arrange a meeting for that as well. Take care.